So I've gotten the chance to ride the Surron Light Bee a couple other times, but I was just using it as a pit bike. But this time I got to test the thing out in the woods, and I found some answers to these following questions. Was it worth the price? How does it stack up against other gas-powered full-size dirt bikes, as well as other e-bikes? And is the Light Bee an adequate trail bike for tight single track? Today, I'm going to be bringing the answers to all those questions to you as I give my first impressions of the Surron Light Bee X, which is Surron's entry into the small electric dirt bike class. I also made a video about the Surron Ultra Bee, so be sure to check that out. But before we get into all that, I just want to give a huge thanks to Kibuk Cycle Sales in Kittanning, PA for providing the bike for this video. If you're around the Western Pennsylvania area and are interested in purchasing a Surron or gas-powered dirt bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides, and more, be sure to stop by Kibuk Cycle Sales and check out their awesome selection. I'm also trying to reach 5,000 subs. It's free and it really helps me out, so hit that button below and join the SoupMoto crew today. So let's hop right into it. The Surron Light Bee X was completely stock, the one that I was riding. It was a demo unit. I went out for a ride with my friends, and here's what I thought about it. Here's my first impressions. So the bike has two modes. It has eco and sport mode. I pretty much preferred the sport mode the whole time. The eco mode, it just doesn't have the power all there. The power delivery in the sport mode is very snappy, and given that the bike is super light, it really does feel like a little tiny electric rocket that you're riding. The eco mode is definitely way more tamed down. When I was using the Surron Light Bee as a pit bike, I would let my friends try it out and ride it, and I would give it to them in eco mode just to start out because the sport mode definitely is pretty zippy. It's a good one for like beginners to try out, but really when you're riding it, I pretty much use the sport mode the whole time. The power delivery, like I said, it's pretty zippy in sport mode, and it's much more tamed down in eco mode. It does sort of have a ceiling where it tops out at, even in sport mode, and I'll talk about that a little later in the video. So how does it feel to ride the bike like chassis wise? The Surron Light Bee is pretty narrow, and it's also quite small as well. It's pretty much the same size as a pit bike, maybe a little bigger, kind of like the size of a mountain bike pretty much. It's way narrower than a dirt bike, way narrower than a pit bike, not as narrow as a mountain bike, but it feels like that. That's how I describe it to all my friends. You know, because of that, it is very light, but the power is completely fine on flat ground. It does really well. It's super zippy. It outperforms pit bikes that I've ridden. I did a little time trial once, and I did really good against other gas-powered pit bikes. So it really has a zippy power delivery, and it's really quick. I mean, obviously, that's how electric bikes are. They're super quick. There's a lot of torque, and it does really well on flat ground. But I noticed once I got this bike on the trails, the trail that I was riding had a lot of elevation changes, and up those steeper hills, it kind of just falls flat. It has a lot of zip at first when you come out of the turn, but once you kind of reach like terminal velocity up the hill, it felt like the power just sort of flattened out. And it did have a little bit of trouble kind of crawling up some of the hills that I took it up. Now, like I said, it's really light and fun feeling. It's very small. But when I got on it, I was riding a bunch of other bikes that day, the Surron Ultra Bee being one of them. And at first I was a little bit disappointed when I got on it and I took it on the trail, that being the Light Bee X, the smaller Surron. I was a bit disappointed when I was going up the hills and stuff, and the first few laps around this woods loop that I was doing, I was a little bit dejected, and I gave it to one of my friends and I said, you try it out, see what you think of it. And I went and got the Ultra Bee, and I was trying to ride that around a little bit too. And my friend took it for a ride, and he got back, and we were just kind of discussing our thoughts on it and that sort of thing. And he said something really interesting. He said, I get what you're saying. It sort of falls flat in some areas and that sort of thing. But I changed my mindset. I basically stopped thinking of this as a dirt bike, and I thought of it as a mountain bike. And as soon as I did that, I started having a lot more fun. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, well, give me that thing back. Let me try it. And so I took it for another couple laps around the woods loop. And I was just thinking about it like, all right, I'm just on an e-mountain bike. I'm ripping around. I'm having fun. Not expecting dirt bike. Not thinking dirt bike. Get that out of your head. I was just thinking mountain bike. And I think a lot of this comes from the skinny tires. It does have pretty skinny tires. At first, I was trying to ride it like a dirt bike, and the skinny tires were like sliding all over the place. I was calling them pizza slicers. I was getting mad. And once I started thinking of this as a mountain bike, it just kind of all changed. It got a lot more playful for me. I wasn't expecting to do stuff that a dirt bike could do. And then I started getting pretty impressed with it. I was like, oh damn, this is kind of a fun mountain bike to ride. And I was zipping around, and I ended up having way more fun on the bike. And it's weird, I don't know. It's much more of a pit bike and a mountain bike than a full-size dirt bike. So I would say if you're gonna get one of these, have that mountain bike mindset. Don't try to go into it thinking that this is going to be a dirt bike, because it's really not. That's not really what it is. I don't know. It might be marketed like a dirt bike, but it's chassis-wise, frame-wise, it just feels more like a mountain bike. And because of that, it does have like a moto-like seat, but it was a little weird sitting down on it. I'm 6 foot tall, and I just felt kind of like I kept getting slid forward onto the battery compartment whenever I was like going down a hill trying to sit down. So I found myself just like standing up all the time, kind of like if I was on a trials bike or like a downhill mountain bike, just like basically standing up the entire time. And I think that's the better way to ride it. So yeah, that's a little bit about how does it feel to ride the bike. Now let's talk about the stats that I care about. I'm not so into electronics. I don't know much about the battery types and all that stuff. So I'm just going to put it in layman's terms and talk about the things that I would care about if I was buying this bike. So first off, it's going to be the range. Now, straight from their website, it says 20 to 60 miles per charge, and it charges in about 3 hours. Now, like I said, I charged this bike up fully before the ride, and I got a whole evening's ride on it, and it went down to about maybe 10 to 15%. So I got a full charge out of it. I rode the thing the whole time. My buddies rode it. We put a good ride on it, and it does that perfectly. It does about one ride, I will say. And obviously, depending on the terrain and what mode you're in, it's going to use that charge quicker or slower, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a lot of elevation, technical stuff, going up hills, it's going to eat away at that battery pretty quick. And so, yeah, that's about the range of it. I would say about one ride, one aggressive sort of ride. Now, if you're trying to do a bunch of long stuff and like ride all day long, that's not really what you're going to end up doing. It's going to run out before you do a whole day's ride. Like when I say day, I mean like sun up to sundown. If you're doing like endurance, long distance stuff, which I don't really know why you'd be doing on this bike anyway. That's not really what it's marketed for, but yeah, 20 to 60 miles per charge, charges in about 3 hours. The brakes, 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes. They are awesome. They work great. The bike's pretty light. The chassis is small and nimble. So those disc brakes really lock up nice and stop you quick. The tires, I refer to them as pizza slicers. Front and rear, they are 70/100 by 19, and they are narrow. They're narrow little mountain bike tires. I don't know, they just feel quite narrow. They're not very beefy. Don't expect anything crazy out of the tires. They're adequate for, moderate terrain, but super technical stuff, they get a little sketchy, and that's the tire dimension. The bike has basically no maintenance. It's pretty much just charge it. That's all you got to do. Might have to switch out tires and brakes and stuff like that, but other than that, no maintenance. Just charge it, ride it, charge it, ride it. That's it. It's a super easy bike, and that makes it awesome for beginners. Like if you have a kid, someone who's never ridden a bike before, really anything, even adults, it's a great bike to try sort of riding on two wheels. Honestly, it's super approachable for beginners, and it's a really enjoyable bike for not only beginners, but people with a lot of experience as well. Now, the price I've seen ranges between like $4,400 to $4,700. I'm not exactly sure. That's what I saw online, but it's definitely less than the Surron Ultra Bee, which sits at around $5,600 to $6,700. So like maybe $2,000 less than the Ultra Bee. And the question is it worth that? Should you go for this budget e-bike over the other options out there, one of them being the Ultra Bee? And I think it depends what you're doing with it. If you just want a pit bike, you're basically just using it as like a fun, very exciting little transportation vehicle around the pits if you're into races, or if you just want to have an extra bike for people to ride around on, like friends that aren't dirt bike riders, kids, stuff like that. If you've seen some of my other videos about the CRF 250F, kind of the same reasons I got that bike is the same reasons I would buy the Surron. It's a super enjoyable bike, super fun. It gives you that thrill of riding an electric dirt bike, but it feels way more approachable. It's super lightweight, super nimble, feels like a mountain bike. It's not as capable on things that you would take like a full-size dirt bike on. I probably wouldn't take it on, it could probably do like BMX jumps, that sort of thing. But if you try to take it on a motocross track or any super big jumps, which I definitely want to try out at some point, and I'll make a video on that in the future. But if you try to do that, it's probably going to underperform. And like I said, going up hills and stuff, doing hill climbs, all that sort of thing, it kind of underperforms in that aspect. But it does amazing as a pit bike. It's super fun. And like I said, the maintenance issue of it, like it's basically no maintenance. You don't have to think about it. And who wants to be working on their pit bike all the time? You know, like you just want the thing to work and ride around. At least I do. So if you just want a pit bike or something for fun, like these things are awesome. They're so fun. And this was the first electric dirt bike that I ever rode. And I just kept wanting to ride it more and more. It's super enjoyable to ride. It performs like a pit bike or an electric mountain bike, and it fills that role excellently. And like I said before, the basically no maintenance of it makes it super approachable for beginners or just people who don't have a lot of time to be working on bikes. Like I said, it's lightweight, very capable on a lot of terrain. It can struggle a bit on some of the things, but like I said, I'll take every chance I get to ride one. They are super, super fun. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Once again, huge thanks to Kibuk Cycle Sales for providing the bike. That's all for now. Soup out.